Welcome. My name is Ryan Oakes. I am with Accenture. Accenture is hosting this evening's panel. I am beyond excited and honored by the three panelists that we have for you today. Welcome. My name is Ryan Oakes. I am with Accenture. Accenture is hosting this evening's panel. I am beyond excited and honored by the three panelists that we have for you today. I just have a couple of minutes of remarks and a little bit to set the tone for how we'll use the time that we do have here together. I think you'll also hopefully know that we'll bring a lot of energy and this will be a lively discussion. So my panelists have all promised me that despite being the end of the second day, we're going to bring it. So, when we talk about generative AI, today you can't walk 50 feet without hearing about generative AI, right? To execute simulations, strategies, and solutions. And sometimes it's with mind-boggling speed and ever-increasing accuracy. Analyzing vast troves of data to identify threats, anticipate adversarial maneuvers, and allocate resource time. All of you, or at least all of you should be, increasingly wrestling with how and when generative AI can be deployed at scale, both safely and at speed, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about today. The risks of slow or non-adoption are very clear, as unrestrained state and criminal actors leverage generative AI to attack elections, networks, critical infrastructure, political systems, and public trust. I would argue that right now the international security community is wrestling with how to answer these questions. Now, I have the advantage of being at the end of the 2 days, and so I've been able to participate in, listen to a number of other panels where we talked about AI, and 5 themes came up every single time, and I think that they're going to be core to our discussion today. Value, which is how do we move away from kind of single use case type of activity to looking across the full breadth of the organization and putting together a holistic plan. 2, what do you need to have in place? I call it the digital core, whether it's your infrastructure, your data, what do you need to have in place in order to be able to leverage generative AI? 3, talent, skilling, people. How do you identify, hire, train both the new talent that's highly specialized and also bring your organization along with you? Responsible or sovereign AI, I think it needs no description, critically important. And then what I think of as a persistent innovation model, because this isn't a one-time activity. This is something that we have to do again and again. So today, we're going to dig into it a bit. Just a bit of housekeeping. We're going to spend about 20 minutes or so. I've got some questions for the panelists. We'll hear from them. I'm then going to invite really unique, new, and insightful comments from the audience. I think everybody got the clue. So I will welcome new ideas, things that people might like to raise for about 15 minutes, where we can get some additional thoughts from this incredibly esteemed group in the audience, and then we'll have a wrap up. We will finish on time because I know everybody's got to move. So with that, I'd like to introduce the 3 panelists that we have here. I'm incredibly honored. First and foremost, Mr. Giovanna, the NATO Deputy Secretary General. Thank you so much for being with us today. Director Ray of the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation from the US. And Dr. Strack Zimmermann, who is the chairwoman of the Defense Committee of the Liberal Party of the German Bundestag. I do my best. Fantastic. So let me grab a seat, and we're going to start. I'm going to start right to my left and ask. It's kind of an opening question. So we've seen new technologies before, right? There's a hype cycle. We've seen lots of new technologies before. What are your thoughts about whether AI is different? And what do you see as 1 or 2 major opportunities and or risks?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Director Ray. We know we are politicians together, so beware. Listen, in NATO, beyond doing everything that I do together with the Secretary General, I'm also chairing the Innovation Board and I'm supposed to be Mr. Innovation across the alliance. And of course, in our labeling in NATO, we call all these new technologies emerging disruptive. I would call them transformational new technologies. Because, of course, they are disruptive, but in fact, the impact is so transversal, is so transformative, is so without boundaries, in a way, that I think they are putting ahead of us a massive challenge, huge opportunity, but also massive challenges. I come to Munich straight from the NATO defense ministers meeting. Also the NATO-Ukraine Council with Mr. Umerov, our colleague from Ukraine. And of course the media and even probably the ministers were focused most on what we do, deterrence and defense for us, new plans, helping Ukraine, important things. But among the decisions that our defense ministers took just 48 hours ago, it was new guiding policy for generative AI for NATO. A revision of the 2021 already adopted AI and big data strategy by NATO that has responsible use principles attached to that. And we are looking forward, and we thank our American allies and hosts for the Washington Summit 75th anniversary, and we are looking to what we call deliverables also on AI, generative AI, or some people like the UK, at the Prime Minister Sunak's summit a few months back, frontier AI. One observation is the fact that AI is transversally transforming all the other massively transformative new technologies in the making, from quantum to by the way, biotech. We approved a new NATO policy with responsible use of biotech 48 hours ago. Novel materials, new materials that were, I was educated with the Mendeleev table when I was an engineer in my very young years back in Romania. This is going to change that. Space, autonomous weapons and things. So this is the second observation, that don't look at AI and generative AI and the future just for the impact, but the fact that this will hyper-accelerate quantum, biotech, novel materials, space, everything transversally. So this will be an immense conglomerate of transformative technologies coming to age more or less about the same time. So I think that a few years back we are speaking of Industrial Revolution 4.0. I think we are basically now in 5.0 as we speak. We are in 5.0 as we speak. Last point. It is the obligation of NATO. The obligation of NATO, not only to defend each other, not only to maintain Article 5, not only to provide security and bring Sweden, another super like Finland, super technological nations into our fold. But we are an organization based on values. So I want to say here loud and clear that it is our ambition and our obligation for NATO to be the organization that is spearheaded, together with others, with EU, with others, with national governments, what we call the gold standard for responsible ethical use of AI and other similar technologies in defense. This is our sacrosanct obligation to defend our people, to defend our values, to defend our territory, to defend 1 billion people. But I think we carry an ethical obligation with us in the most sensitive subject to our young generations that are questioning AI, especially when it comes to defense and national security. Am I wrong? I'm not. So the obligation of NATO, and that's what we strive to do, and we I hope will be doing even better and faster, is to be establishing, together with all of you, together with technology, the technological companies, and thank Accenture for bringing us together, the gold standard. Last point, speaking of innovation in NATO, after the AI policy adoption by NATO in 2021, we established a data and AI board in NATO, which is the first NATO committee that has private sector inside the table, deciding together with all of us. That's innovation, all right. So we believe that we should set an example that government, public sector, international organizations, and of course civil society are in one place. So I believe we are entering not only a period of great power competition, a great trepidation, but in human history and for the human species, the most transformative and most complex period of human history, period. And we have the obligation as NATO and all of us as leaders in business, in politics, in national governments or international organizations to be able to defend our values and make sure that these technologies are bringing the positive thing that they are bringing, and try to put as much as we can at bay the immense risks and complexities they bring about to all of us.
Fantastic. Director Ray, I'd love to bring you in and get your thoughts.
Well, I think I would translate that last answer as it's not hype. And certainly, generative AI, we think, has more impact across more walks of life than almost any other significant technology we've had to deal with recently. Think of something like cryptocurrency, obviously very important, very significant, affects a lot of things, but it pales by comparison in terms of how much it permeates the landscape. From an FBI end, I think we would maybe focus more on the risks and not just the opportunities. Obviously, we're very involved in all sorts of discussions about the ethical use of AI with others in our government, the private sector, our allies. But from a risk perspective, I find that with almost every emerging technology, and certainly with AI, I always have two reactions. The first is, wow, we can do that? And then, oh no.
Yeah.
You mean they can do that?
Yeah.
And I think that applies in spades with AI. So we're focused on two big, broad categories of risk. The first is protecting the advancement of AI, innovation of AI, from it being sort of hijacked by non-rule of law respecting, non-democracy respecting governments to advance in the race to have better command of AI. So that's one. And then second, the ways in which AI can be used or really misused by already dangerous actors, people, governments, to be more dangerous. In the first category, we're keenly focused on trying to protect innovation, investment, the training data that AI models are built on from being stolen or maybe even manipulated by governments that have a different mindset than the countries represented in this room. And I'm thinking, of course, in particular about the People's Republic of China, which has over and over and over again demonstrated itself to be a serial intellectual property thief. So their whole economic strategy includes as a bedrock stealing other people's innovation and data. And they've stolen more of Americans' personal and corporate data than every nation, big or small, combined. So you put that focus in the context of AI, and it's a concern. On the other side of things, in terms of bad guys misusing AI, if anybody sort of thinks to themselves, boy, I sure hope fill in the blank isn't using AI, the answer is they already are.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about terrorists, I'm talking about hackers, both criminal hackers and nation-state hackers. I'm talking about child pornographers. I'm talking about fraudsters.
Yeah.
All of these actors are, at the very least, researching and experimenting with AI, and in some cases, actively using it. So we're seeing terrorists use AI to research how to make bombs and how to conceal their efforts to research how to make bombs. We're seeing things like spearphishing emails become instantly more convincing than they would have been before the advent of AI.
Yeah.
And of course, we're seeing foreign intelligence services use AI for influence operations and other things along those lines. At the moment, so far, the good news, I suppose, is that AI is most useful to take mediocre bad guys and make them competent.
Yeah.
The most expert adversaries are, at the moment, really using AI more to improve their speed, their scale, their efficiency, as opposed to qualitatively really taking their game up. But that day is coming rapidly. And it's hardly a good thing that there are so many previously mediocre bad actors who are now competent that's not a positive development, and it certainly is taxing the resources of security services and law enforcement everywhere. So it is an area where I think the need for partnership, both among like-minded governments and with the private sector, is as high as really anything we're dealing with.
Well put. Now I won't sleep tonight.
Dr. Struck-Zimmermann. Me too.
Yes.
It's great to sit beside the FBI.
I bring gloom and doom.
That is not what I said. I just said I wouldn't sleep tonight.
that's true. But
Dr.
FBI sounds, yes.
I'd love to bring you into the conversation and also maybe also start to move into discussions about how do we build a consensus. So just what are your thoughts, and then how do we build a consensus around how to work together, how to collaborate? Love to get your thoughts.
Yes, first of all, people are, on one hand, they are really looking forward, there's something new, but on the other side, of course, they were anxious about it. Yeah. And you just said it yesterday, I talked to Google, what could we do, election, how could we check if there are fake news or not, and so AI could be very helpful to make a difference. But as the head of the Defense Committee, it's also a great opportunity, of course, for the military, especially for unmanned but strategically planned advances that do not engage soldiers. I mean, this is a really question we are looking forward. What's the kind of war will be in 20 years, in the 40s, in the 50s? I mean, it's very close. So there is a chance, but on the other hand, we could see what happens now in Ukraine. On the one hand, it's a classical war. On the other hand, AI could be to make a solution or what will be in the internet. Spooky stories. People believe really, I mean, it's unbelievable. So you have to make the difference, and I'm sure that in the future we will have not only the question what happens in the battlefield, what happens to influence people that they believe really strange things, and I think this is a really problem. So there's a chance, of course, to save lives. On the other hand, we have to realize that the kind of war will definitely change, and we have to find an answer. And of course, it's also a question of moral. How could we use it? And there are many people who say, "Oh, AI, is it that the weapon will decide if you kill this or if you know what I mean?" Yes. That there is nobody who decided, no human being who decided. So there are big chances, but I tell you, even for us to decide to invest in the future, it's a huge challenge, because if we decide or if we buy now things or we invest things, we have no idea is it enough for the next years, or in 2-3 years we're coming together and say, okay, it was 2 years ago, it was very modern, and things changed so rapidly that we are always running back, and we are always behind the wave. That's a really problem for us, even because we have to pay for it, we have to explain, we have to find majority in the Bundestag, and then it costs really that money. Yeah. And after a while you say, okay. You could see it in the iPhone 5 years ago. It's definitely different to this one. I just bought it in Taiwan, because in Germany it was not on the market. It's a different story.
Different panel. Fantastic. Mr. Giovanna, let's come back to, I really want to dig in a little bit on this consensus point and talk a little bit about, sort of how do we coordinate? How do we, because I think we've all said some variation of we have to go fast, it's coming at scale, and it matters in every way. What are your thoughts on how we build consensus and work together to find solutions?
Listen, in one of the meetings of the North Atlantic Council, regularly we invite industry, thought leaders, and people from walks of life that are important to us. And I remember that one of the allies asked Eric Schmidt a question about China and about what about our competitors, rivals, adversaries not having the same constraints like in democracies about ethical use, responsible use. They don't care that much. And the answer from Eric Schmidt, and that's someone that really knows these things very well.
Yeah.
So listen, the moment we lose our edge, our advantage in innovation, in relationship with our competitors, rivals, or adversaries, at that moment, this conversation is becoming superfluous. I hear people in uniform, and they know what I'm talking about. And in Germany especially, that is such a nation that has a culture of arms control, making sure that there are norms, global norms, not only our global norms, but there is a specificity to many nations around the world, especially in Europe. And I have to say that AI will be transforming massively on the positive side, procurement, imagery, wargaming, recruitment, all these things, but will complicate tremendously already a world that has almost no global norms on nuclear proliferation, on arms control, and things like that. So that's how to build consensus around this. I think first thing we have to understand that we have to harness every single square inch and cubic meter of territory and brains in the democratic world. Not everyone has deep venture capital markets like the US or like the UK. Not everyone has a deep industrial base like Germany, France, and others. But I have talent in Albania. I have talent in North Macedonia, in the Baltic countries, in my home country of Romania. So how to find a way that this ecosystem of innovation encompasses everyone? If we do this, also including universities and NGOs and civil society, we'll do a little bit of the portion of consensus building within our own societies.
Yeah.
And this is something I believe we should continue to be doing. Then, selectively, and that's what President Trump and the administration are saying, listen, there are places where we need to talk also to our rivals and adversaries. There are some places where we need global norms, from climate change, including on AI. So that's why Prime Minister Sunak and before President Biden and that President Macron after that, they invited the Frontier AI Security Summit in London, also the Chinese. Not only the EU. So this is something I believe we have to make sure. This is my strong appeal to all of us. And the last thing about consensus. That's also something about pendulum. In the 60s, America knows this best. And in a way, we are also where we are because America had such a bold investment in innovation in the 60s. But at that time, 90% of the funding, of the money, of the institutional support came from the government. Today, 90% of everything I use in NATO, all our militaries or national security or intelligence establishments are produced by the private sector. While China has this fusion here, I'm not saying for us to go back to the 60s, is not the point, but we have to find a way to discuss with more trust and more openness between us doing national security and the tech companies and our public opinion and our young ones. And this is, I think, a beginning of a way of creating consensus within our societies, having the edge, and having the luxury, if you want. Of course, that's a must ethically and politically, but also the luxury to be ethical when the other guys don't have the constraints that we have, and they can do whatever they want because they don't care about their people, don't care about rule of law, they don't care about democracy, they don't care. And this is a way in order for us to find a new balance. So in Industry 5.0, but I think it should also find a new equilibrium of trust between private sector, venture capitalists, young population, us in national governments and international institutions like NATO. So that will be my, 0.25% advice on
Fantastic.
building consensus.
Industry 5.0, you heard it first here. Two more quick questions for the panel, and then I'll open it up. Director Ray, I have to ask about election integrity. There's so much in the way in front of us here in 2024, and I'm just curious at the intersection of generative AI and external influence, election integrity. I'd love to get your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think certainly anybody that's paying attention is concerned about the potential impact of generative AI on election interference and malign foreign influence. I already referred earlier to the fact that generative AI is helping on the cyber side hackers be more effective, both in identifying vulnerabilities and in exploiting those vulnerabilities, generating malicious code, things like that. That's already happening, not just in election infrastructure, but against infrastructure more broadly.
Yeah.
And so that's the first place we start in terms of our concern. But I think the other part of it is, of course, generative AI is particularly effective at helping adversaries create more convincing fake or fictitious personas. And that helps not only with things like spear phishing emails in the hacking context, but also in terms of disinformation and malign foreign influence in terms of creating accounts we've already seen historically. The Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the North Koreans all use fake personas, fake accounts, typically to trick people into thinking they are in fact citizens of the country they're targeting. And so that's a reality, and any technology that makes adversaries significantly more effective in that regard is something that, that of course concerns us. And so we are focused in particular on trying to figure out how we can work collaboratively with the technology community, with election officials, with our partners to try to build resilience. There is a huge role for the private sector here. AI is actually quite good at detecting AI.
Yes.
And so we need to have the private sector really step up here and play a significant role, because to be able to detect deep fakes, for example, at scale, the only place that's going to happen is through the industry, which has the ability to invest and develop at scale. And I'm encouraged by some of the things we're seeing in that regard. But we need more of it. Certainly on our end, we're trying to innovate as well. I mean, the FBI just recently got a patent for a deepfake detection tool. So we have people toiling away innovating too. But what we can invest in innovation on something like this pales by comparison to what the gigantic technology companies can. So I think this is a place for whether you want to call it consensus, I would call it partnership. Partnership not based on the fusion, not based on duress and coercion, but true partnership based on shared values and a desire to work together. I think ultimately is a competitive advantage for all of us, but we have to take advantage of it.
Yeah, fantastic. Dr. Zimmerman, just a last question on, so we've been talking about urgency and speed, right, and the need for us to move quickly. You've talked about some of the challenges with funding and the need to continuously innovate. I'd love to just get your thoughts on what more we should be doing, one or two things that we should be doing.
Yes, if you're talking about the Bundeswehr, the German army, we just do something. So we have introduced the Cyber Innovation Hub in the Bundeswehr, especially with civilian management. So people come to the Bundeswehr who are not soldiers, working together with soldiers who have an idea and the spirit what AI means. And this is very important because it's parallel to the Bundeswehr. It's working for the Bundeswehr, but it's not part of the Bundeswehr because the procurement processes in the Bundeswehr are it's how it is. And the thing is that, like every company, the army is looking for really nerds. And there are many nerds. many young people who are interested in working for their army, for the Bundeswehr, to be part for a few years, to be part of the Bundeswehr to protect their own country. And so when we started with this project, with the Cyber Innovation Hub, to find the right people, to find the right man and woman coming to the Bundeswehr without being soldier, I mean, you have to realize that it's not Monday to Friday, starting 7 o'clock in the morning and finishing 4 o'clock p.m.
Yes.
So maybe there are really especially really in a good mood to work cleverly in the night of Saturday to Sunday, whatever. So we have to think in a new way to find people who come to the Bundeswehr, and this is a really chance to come together. And without these people, we have really problems. But I think that the Cyber Innovation Hub, it's really successful. It's really interesting to see what they are looking for, and they realized what the how dangerous it could be. I mean, you just said it. Other countries are not waiting for us. And it starts in the army and in the political way, and to explain people, again, I said it again because it's so important to explain simple people, you know what I mean, that if they open their iPad or reading wherever, that they have to know that it could be, bullshit. They have to learn it.
Yes.
This is really a challenge for us, also in the way to defend this country.
Fantastic. I'd like to invite the audience in at this point. We've got time for 3 or 4 comments. So we've got one hand up right by the camera. We'll start there.
Hi, my name is Lydia. I'm a technology consultant experienced in the DoD and special operations. My question is about data interoperability for the purpose of having digital twins to use in warfare for decision advantage. Is that something that you talked about 48 hours ago?
Yes, we did. For the ones who do not know, what NATO is at best, is basically in setting standards for all the allies. So for us to be able to fight and defend each other. And the complexity of new technologies, transformative technologies, disruptive, is bringing additional pressure on our capacity to do these things together. So one of my roles in NATO is making sure that not only the big, strong, highly capable allies will be able to use technology to the level that they should be used, but also the smaller allies that have not that many resources. They are more limited in terms of capabilities. So this is something that we take very, very seriously. And as we are now implementing our new defense plans, our new regional plans, our new deterrence and defense logic, which is the biggest transformations in generations in NATO, we speak about multi-domain operations. And what does it mean? It means that in one operation, I'm supposed to be using, in a sort of an integrated way, seamlessly, land, air, sea, cyber, and space. An F-35, which is not only a superb, like others, but a superb fighter jet, is in fact a collector of data. I'm in a situation to use, and I think there are gigabytes of data that one F-35 is using. How do I use this in making sure that my sailors and my submarines and my sensors and my satellites are using this in a contiguous way? So yes, it is one of our biggest, I don't say challenges, but also opportunities to really outperform our competitors. And this is one of the things that we do, and our military leaders are doing day in and day out.
Fantastic. We'll right down here.
Yes, thank you very much. We're able to, André Lezogo-Petri, I'm running an organization which is basically trying to build up a European version of ARPA. We had a vaccine in 8 months. Now we're celebrating, unfortunately, the 2 years of the Ukraine war. Could you give us in each of your organization, at NATO, at the AFPI, and at the Bundeswehr, concrete application of AI that you implemented based on the experience we learned in Ukraine? Because definitely the war of tomorrow is not going to be the war of yesterday. I mean, we had a lot of concept papers, strategy, doctrines, but what concretely could you give us a use case how AI was implemented at scale and with impact in your organizations? Thanks.
He got a 3-for-1 in. I'll give you a moment to think. You were going down to the end first. No. So I'll invite which of the panelists would like to start first. Just where have you really seen the ability to implement to make a difference?
Well, I mean, I referred earlier in the sense of adversary use of AI in terms of being able to generate malicious code and identify vulnerabilities and so forth. On our end, we're already finding, including coming out of Ukraine, AI being very useful in terms of being able to identify patterns and trends, which allows us to be significantly more agile, including with our partners, including with the Ukrainians, in detecting, preventing, mitigating cyber attacks.
Great.
I'll go in the same vein. Imagery. And this is something that in Ukraine is used superbly nicely. I would say with even more ingenuity than sometimes ourselves, because they are forced to innovate on a daily basis. So you have, you have citizens that are buying from the shelf a small drone, a small camera, and they found a way through AI to basically integrate all the data coming from multiple sources, from, of course, military intelligence, from other sources, from professional things, from satellites, from other things, but also from their own citizens. And in a superbly way, AI integrated, they are using this just to target, to identify, and to inform. So the time in Ukraine, by Ukrainians, of course with our help, technological and military help, has shortened so much between there is a strike from Russia, from Russian whatever, a piece of artillery, and the way to identify that and strike back, which is nothing short of remarkable. And the last point of news, also our defense ministers, the last 48 hours ago, we also decided, I want to thank Germany and Poland and all the other allies, to establish a joint lessons learned and training center about the war in Ukraine that will be learning from each other 2 ways. This will be based initially in Poland, and that's where we'll have a lot of lessons learned and a lot of things for us to eventually use in our own systems. So, this is really quite innovative in what they do.
Yeah. Would you like to add?
Yes, just one sentence that we work together with Helsing. It's a new type of security and artificial intelligence company. But I tell you the truth that, it's such a speedy moment.
Yes.
And I just said to you that the Bundeswehr, and it's not a joke, I mean, it's reality, and it's not only in Germany. I tell you, I have many contacts to defense committees in other European countries. And for all of us, it's a huge challenge because it's so fast, everything is so fast. So we are looking for startup, for companies who work together, and it's a mixture of civil and military. I think this will be the future, because otherwise we are really lost. And of course, this terrible war in Ukraine, we learned a lot. I mean, this is the truth. And so it's, how could I say, it's a chance. It's not ironically, it's a chance to see what could happen not only in Ukraine, what could happen in Europe. And so we have to work together with young companies, with their ideas. And really, they are looking forward to work together with the army. I mean, this is the good news. And that we could talk about this challenge 2 years or 3 years ago. It was not possible to talk about these things.
Yes.
People would say, "Okay, come on, what did you smoke yesterday? Or what did you drink? And are you crazy?" And everybody was afraid and said, "Come on." And really, this world changed totally. These are the good news, but the challenge is enormous.
Yeah, fantastic. We have time for one. Oh, sorry. Did you have a comment?
No. Question.
We have one last question. Go ahead. Quick one.
Yeah. Nick, I'm a venture capitalist. I invest in companies that help defense and intelligence organizations. My question is where you see the most leverage in government to ensure that we stay ahead of our adversaries, particularly China and AI. And I guess I'd ask the question in the following way. If in 10 years we wanted our defense and intelligence organizations to be ahead in the way that was articulated, what one thing would you change? Is it simply a matter of budget? Would you change the acquisition process, the way that government works with technology companies? Would you want to change close connections to the largest technology companies? Would it be a shift in immigration? There are a lot of different levers that we can pull to get ahead in AI. I'm curious which ones you would put the highest priority on.
All right. So maybe a quick answer from one or two of you, and then we'll wrap.
Listen, you're a venture capitalist, and you're impatient by nature. It's in your DNA. I would also urge your industry, financial industry, venture capital, to work closer with us and have a little bit more resources and interest and profit from deep tech, and being a little bit more patient, because most of the technologies in my line of work take a little bit more time than the very quick pace of this thing. So this will be one. And I'm also not only innovating in NATO, but I'm also the guy doing advertising for my organization. But really, I'm very, very happy to see that in NATO, we have created the first of its sort multinational sovereign venture capital fund, which seems a contradiction in terms. So allies have decided to put together some money in order to fund startups in deep tech, dual-use technologies, and take the risk. And by the way, what we have done, we have hired from the market the best venture capitalists to run the show for us. We don't interfere at all. And together with a collection of test centers, accelerators, call it Diana, we are trying to do. And I think this kind of combination, not only big tech, which is of course indispensable, but also financial markets, and having a little bit of more money for deep tech, for venture capitalists, will make also us more agile. We'll be more open to work with you, and I think this is a win-win proposition. There is a lot of money to be made there, and also stay ahead of our competitors. So let's use the best part of capitalism and put it to work, because it works. Democracy and free markets will always outcompete the other guys. Let's just put to work what we have in the new era that we are now part of.
Yeah. Last comment, either or both? Please go ahead, Dirk.
Well, I think I might say something pretty similar, which is I'm not sure that I would be the one to be recommending one industrial policy or something that the government should engage in. I do find that greater collaboration between the venture capital community and emerging technology companies and security services is something that has not always been a thing, but it has intensified, I think, very encouragingly over the last, I don't know, let's say 5 years, maybe a little more. And I think the idea is to try to capitalize on what's best of both. There are things that emerging technology companies are seeing, and most of the conversations I have too often, I think, revolve around great tools that companies think we should consider buying. And while I'm all for that, there's also, I think, an opportunity for emerging companies to be able to identify trends that they see coming around the bend. You know, government has not historically been the greatest at thinking long term, whereas if you want to look around the bend, I can't think of any place better to do that than emerging technology companies. The other reason for that engagement to be so important is that our adversaries, in particular the Chinese, are targeting not just big companies, they're targeting where the innovation is. The innovation is coming in small companies, which somewhere along the continuum from 3 guys in a garage who all know each other really well to a $1 billion company, there's a transformation where the company goes from the culture, the size changes, but the culture remains like three guys in a garage, but suddenly the attack surface is significantly higher. The cybersecurity risk is greater. The insider threat risk is greater. And so the need for partnership to protect that innovation, I think, is higher than I think some emerging technology companies fully appreciate.
Yeah. And the last
word. Just one sentence, because we're looking for the European Union. We are looking forward to create a committee of defense, and it's not only for defense, it's for security and industry, because of course we have to work together.
Yeah.
And the question is, we have the discussion in the European Union about the question, what is sustainable? And I tell you, I have colleagues, and they are talking about sustainability if you are talking about trees, food, whatever. But to create weapons, I mean, it's the same what I said 2 years ago. If I would say to have weapons to protect your country, AI or in a conventional way is sustainability.
Yeah.
Because if we have not a safe house, we definitely will stop to talk about food and anything. You could see what happens in Ukraine. So I think we have now the possibility in the European Union that we create a new committee. Maybe we have a different kind of discussion now because reality is in front of our continent. And so we have to change a lot. I mean, it's not easy, but it's not something for Weicheier. I have no soft eggs in whatever. It is, okay, you understand what I mean? But we have to do it. We have no choice.
Yeah. Wonderful. With that, we're going to close out the panel. Look, it has been my absolute honor to have the three of you join me today in this conversation. Thank you. And please give them a round of applause.